Good morning, students. This is Harcharan Singh, PGT English, Cambridge International School, Dasua. And I hope you all are fit, fine, and healthy at your homes and studying well. Students, there are two textbooks, Hornbill and Snapshots, and we are reading Snapshots. Students, we are reading the second chapter, The Address, written by Marga Minco. And I'm just going to recap what we read till now. This chapter is about human predicament before, during, and after the war. The story belongs to a girl. The girl goes to an address. That address was given to her by her mother during the war. During the war, the girl was staying at home and she saw one lady, Mrs. Darling, at their house. Mrs. Darling was carrying few things from their house. When she asked her mother, the mother told the narrator that Mrs. Darling, she was helping them by keeping their things with her. Because during the war, if they need to leave the house, they can lose all their things. So Mrs. Darling, she was taking the risk of keeping their things at her place. And at that time, the mother had given the narrator the address of Mrs. Darling. The story begins when the narrator comes to Mrs. Darling's house and Mrs. Darling does not recognize her. She refuses to recognize. The girl thought she must have come to a wrong address. But when she noticed that the lady was wearing her mother's green knitted cardigan and she identified even the buttons also, she was very much sure that Mrs. Darling was telling lie and she was on the right address. The narrator asked the woman about her mother. The woman asked if she had come back. She replied only to her, no one else came with her. The woman opened the door and a passage was behind her. A stale smell emerged all over. The woman told her that she could not do anything for her. The narrator told that she had come from a very distant place by train to meet her. On this, the woman told her that was not convenient for her to talk to her. She could come some other day or some other time. The narrator went back, and somebody in the house started inquiring about the visitor. The narrator again looked at the nameplate. It was written Darlings and number 46. She was on the right address. She went back to the station. While on the way, she did not want to look at those familiar things, those places, those houses, because she did not want disturb herself with the past memories. When she reached the railway station, again she started thinking about her mother and Mrs. Darling, the time when she had seen Mrs. Darling at her house for the first time. And her mother had told her that the story is in background now. When it was before the war, during the first half of the war, she had come home, and at that time, she had seen Mrs. Darling for the first time. And she asked her mother. The mother told she was helping them by keeping their things with them. The girl did not like it. And after that, she and her mother did not talk anything about that. Then, after that, the narrator told us, she remembered the address that was given to her by her mother. It was Mahogany Street, number 46, and she remembered it. But she did not want to go there. After the freedom, she was on one hand not interested in all those things. And secondly, she was afraid of all those things. She was afraid of getting confronted with the past memories and connections that no longer existed. Connections were hidden in cupboards and boxes, and she did not want to recall her memories. And that was just after the war. But after some time, when the things became normal in her life, one day she decided to go and get those things back. She became very curious about the things. She wanted to see and touch those things. And when she had gone for the first time to Mrs. Darling's house, she had refused to recognize her, and then she went the second time. This time, a 15-year-old girl opened the door and she asked the narrator. The narrator told she wanted to meet her mother. The girl told the mother was doing something at the backside of the house and she could come and wait. Okay, students, we are going to begin today. In this slide, you will read the next paragraph. The narrator entered the house and started following the girl along the passage. The first thing that she noticed in the house that was a Hanukkah candle holder that was hanging next to the mirror. Candle holder in which candles are put, that is a candlestick stand. The narrator remembered that they never used it because it was, very heavy to port it from one place to another place. They never used that candle holder because that was very heavy. The girl, Mrs. Darling's daughter, she asked the narrator to sit down and she opened the door for the living room. She stopped and she was disturbed. The narrator, she felt that she was standing in a room which she knew and she did not. She knew because the things that were lying there, she identified all those things, but the place was new. That's why she was feeling that she does not know anything. She was standing in the middle of things she did not want to see, and they burdened her. Maybe because of the way things were arranged. The things were lying there at sixes and sevens. Nothing was arranged in any manner. Or the other thing that disturbed him, that was the humid smell in the room and the ugly furniture. The narrator was scared to look at everything. She sat down on a chair which the girl pulled out for her. She looked at the woolen tablecloth. That was the second thing that she recognized. She started rubbing the tablecloth and she was just feeling its texture and its pattern, the design of the tablecloth. And she remembered that on the tablecloth there should be a burn mark because that belongs to them, and once it was burnt at some place and she started looking for that burn mark. It was never repaired. Mrs. Darling's daughter told the narrator that her mother would be back and she asked if she would like to have a cup of tea. The narrator thanked her. The narrator was looking around and she saw that the girl was pouring tea into two cups, and when the girl turned, the narrator noticed that the girl had the same broad back just like her mother's, because the first time when she had noticed Mrs. Darling, when Mrs. Darling was leaving their house carrying a suitcase full of things, she had noticed broad back, and the same she noticed in that girl also. She poured tea from teapot and it had a gold border on the lid. The narrator is identifying all the things. She opened a box and took some spoons out of it. The narrator complimented the girl about the box. The narrator praised that the box was very beautiful. She felt very strange hearing her own voice. It was sounding different to her. I mean, she did not feel that her voice is her own. She was feeling, the narrator is feeling that even her voice is also different here. Then, as the girl turned to give her a cup, she asked if she knew about the box. Then she added that it was an antique according to her mother. The girl pointed around the room and said that there are more. There were many antique things in the room. She told the narrator to see those things. The narrator did not need to follow her direction. She could see which antique things she was talking about. She glanced over the tea table. She remembered how she used to fancy the apple on the pewter plate. Pewter, students, that is a kind of alloy pewter plate, and the girl shared that they used the plate for everything. Once they ate off the plates that were hanging on the wall. The girl wanted to eat off that plate too, but it was not anything special. The narrator found the burn mark on the tablecloth. The girl was looking at the narrator in a question. The narrator told the girl that when you are so used to touching the things around into your house, you hardly notice anything. You only notice when something is missing or it needs to be repaired or you have lent it to someone. The narrator again found that her voice was very unnatural. I mean, she was at a strange surrounding, that she seemed everything was strange there. Even her own things that she was able to identify, those things were looking strange to her. Even her voice is also looking, she is feeling that her voice is very unnatural and very strange. She continued. She told the girl that once her mother asked her if she would help her polish the silver. It was a long time ago, and she was bored that day. She had to stay that day, maybe as she was ill. The narrator is telling the girl that she was home, she was not well, and her mother told her to help her polish the silver. And she asked her mother what silver she is talking about. The mother told that it was the spoons, knives, and forks. And the narrator did not know that that was silver. The girl, Mrs. Darling's daughter, she laughed and said that she bet she did not know it was either with what they ate with. The narrator asked if she knew. The girl hesitated and walked to the sideboard and opened a drawer. She said she would see if it was there. As the girl went to the drawer, she wanted to show the narrator their silver utensils. The narrator got up. She jumped up and she told the girl that she was getting late and she had to catch the train. The girl asked her if she did not want to wait for her mother. The narrator still replied with no and said she must leave. The girl pulled the drawer open. The narrator said she could find her way out and walked down the passage, and she heard the ringing spoons and forks. When she reached at the corner of the road, She looked at the nameplate again. It said Marconi Street, and she was standing at number 46. That was the right address. The address was correct, but she does not want to remember it anymore. She did not want to go back, as the things in there reminded her of memories linked with the familiar life of old times. But they lose the value when you are separated from them, and when you see those things again in the strange environment. The narrator thought of what she would have done with a small rented room where blackout paper hung over the window and no cutlery fitted in the narrow drawer. She finally decided on forgetting the address as it would be the easiest. Okay, students, I'm going to recap what we read today. Today we read when the narrator was refused by Mrs. Dorling. She went back to the station. Then, after some time, she decided to come back again. This time, the second time she came, and the door was opened by a 15-year-old girl that was probably Mrs. Dorling's daughter. And she told that her mother was doing some work at the backside of the house and told her to wait. The narrator went inside and she had to walk along the passage. The narrator first noticed a Hanukkah candle holder, that is a kind of candlestick stand, and she identified the first thing in their house. And the narrator told that they never used that because that was very heavy to use. But it was hanging there and it was lying at Mrs. Darling's place. When she entered the room and she felt like she was at the strange place, but she identifies the things. She knew the place and she did not know. She started looking around, and the second thing that she felt when she sat on the chair, she felt the tablecloth that was their own. She started touching and rubbing it. She felt the pattern and texture of the fabric of the cloth, the design, and its pattern. She identified it and she thought there would be a burn mark on the tablecloth. And she started looking around. The girl offered her tea when the girl was pouring tea into two cups. She turned and the narrator noticed the girl had the same type of broad back like her mother's because when the narrator had seen Mrs. Darling for the first or second time, she was carrying a suitcase full of things from their house and she was moving out of the house. At that time, the narrator had seen Mrs. Darling from the back and she had noticed her broad back, and the girl had also the same. Then the narrator identified the golden border on the lid of the tea kettle. She had also found the burn mark on the tablecloth, and that was never repaired. Then she told the girl that you never notice anything in the house until or unless you lose it or it needs to be repaired. Otherwise, we do not notice normal things in the house. The girl told everything in the room, utensils and other things, those were antique. And she offered the narrator to see those things. The narrator said that she did not need to follow her hand. She could identify which things were antique and theirs. She started looking around, and the narrator is feeling very much disturbed because that is very strange surrounding and the way things are kept there at sixes and sevens. Nothing is in proper order. and she did not like the way the things were put on, and she was feeling very much disturbed. She got up and she told the girl that she was getting late and she had to catch the train. The girl told that she wanted to meet her mother. She said no. I mean, she was getting late and she has to catch the train. She got up, came out of the house, and she was at the corner. She again looked at the nameplate. It was written Marconi Street, number 46, where she was standing. Now she does not want to remember that address. She wants to forget that address. The reason behind that is you want your things back, but when you see your things at strange place, in strange surroundings, in the hands of strange people, those things lose their value and charm. So, in this way, the narrator does not want her things back, and she wanted to forget the address, and that was the easiest thing she could do. Thank you.